Texture groups and texture pages get all the attention in GameMaker, but they do have a lesser-known little sibling for dealing with audio, known as you can probably guess, audio groups. Now, audio groups aren't something you have to worry about in GameMaker generally, unless you're making a really large game with really a lot of audio in it. But I think knowing how stuff works is fun, so hello all you crazy people out there. My name is Michael, I like wizards and dragons and making games. Let's talk about audio groups. So it is going to be really hard to talk about audio groups in GameMaker without comparing them to how texture groups work. If you don't know how texture groups work, I made a video a couple of years ago running through those, and we can well, I'll have that video linked for you if you want to learn more. But audio groups can be found in the same location in the IDE. So if you go to Tools, you see the drop down with a bunch of things in it. Audio groups is the second one from the top, and this is going to open up a fairly similar form to the texture groups, although there's going to be somewhat less stuff in it. By default, all the sounds in your game are going to be categorized under the default audio group, in much the same way that all your textures in your game are going to be by default categorized in the default texture group. It appears that in this sample project I have not gone and sorted them in any different way, so that's fine. The default group has a lot of options grayed out. You can't really change the parameters on the default group. So if you want to start messing around, click the Add New option, and that's going to create a new audio group, and you can go and start playing around with it. So the first thing you can do is you can go and select the text in the current group dropdown, and you can give it your own name. Let's call this AG_sounds and stuff. To this day, I do not know why you can just type into the dropdown here. It looks like you shouldn't be able to. It's the same with the name of the texture group if you want to set that, but you can type into the dropdown and you can give the audio group a name. I wish that they had a separate UI element that actually looked like a text box that you could type into, but whatever. If you want to add content to the audio group, you can either click Add Asset, and you can click a sound to add, or you can go into either double click the sound to open it in a workspace like this, and you can set the audio group through here. Or if you prefer using inspectors, because that's the way things are going in GameMaker nowadays, you can set the audio group through the inspector. You can only set the audio group for sounds that are set to be not streamed from the disk. So for sounds that are loaded into memory and stay there, they're not streamed from the disk. If you have something like background music, which you will often set to compress streamed, you will the audio group setting will be grayed out. You won't be able to set the audio group for that. Let's see, scrolling back over here, you have a list of different platforms that the audio group will be applied to. This is something that you can generally leave on for all platforms all the time, unless you have some very specific situations where you want to have some sounds, if you're making a game for mobile or HTML5 and you want to use a lower quality sound than on desktop or something like that, you might want to disable certain audio groups on certain platforms. I'm not going to get into that. That's really a fairly niche use case. And down at the bottom, there's the export directory. I will get into that later. So first, let's see what we can do with audio groups. So the default audio group. So audio group _default, which by the way cannot be renamed. So that also makes it a little confusing when you try to rename an audio group that you created, because consistency. The default audio group will be loaded into your game as soon as it starts without you having to do anything. But if I were to run the game now with the coin and the footstep sound effects in this sample project sorted into their own audio groups, we're not going to be able to actually play the sounds at first. So you can hear that, well, you don't hear anything. You hear the background music, but you don't hear the footstep sound when I walk around. You don't hear the chime sound when I talk to an NPC. And you might see in the console that there's a bunch of messages popping out that say error audio group is not loaded. And if you have a custom audio group that you created, you are in charge of loading it into your game. You're in charge of making sure that the game actually loads it from the disk, for which you can say audio group load. And to this function, you can pass the name of the audio group. So in my case, that's going to be AG_sounds and stuff. There's a handful of other functions related to audio groups. You can probably guess what a lot of them do. Audio group is loaded, audio group unload down at the bottom. I think it's fairly straightforward. Audio group get assets if you want a list of all sounds that are belonging in an audio group. But anyway, if you hit audio group load at the beginning of your game, or when you enter a level or something like that, you will load all the sounds in the audio group. And now when I run the game, we can actually hear the footstep sounds, and we can hear the chime when I talk to an NPC. As to why you might want to load and unload audio groups, if you have, like I said, this is something you usually only have to do if you're making a very large game with a lot of sounds. If you have a, like a collection of sounds that only are relevant to one level or to one chapter in the story or something like that, you might want to group all those sounds into a dedicated audio group for that story chapter or for that level or whatever, and you might want to load the group when the level starts and unload it when it ends, just so that when you load all of the you don't have to have them all sitting in memory for the entire duration of the game, even if you're only going to use it in a certain area. This is less of a problem with audio types that are set to be compressed and streamed from disk, because these sounds aren't loaded into memory. They are, as the name implies, they are streamed from the disk, the way that you would with music. So you background music will often not have to worry about this. If you have something like voiceovers, you can usually get away with setting voiceovers to compressed and streamed. Maybe for like short voice sound effects like combat screams and stuff, not so much, because you don't want to deal with disk latency. But
Hey.
let's see, that is loading and unloading audio groups. The next thing we can do is we can play with audio group. Let's see, where are they? Stop all. If you want to stop all the sounds in an audio group at the same time, you can use this function. I don't really have a use case in mind for that, but that function is there. The one that I was looking for, audio group set gain. You can set the like the master volume for every sound in an audio group if you like. You can use this to control the volume of different categories of sounds. If you want to have different volume settings in your game for things like sound effects or ambient noise or voiceovers, you can use the audio group set gain function. I am going to how do I want to do this? So let's go into the step event, and I'm going to just write a little bit of code. If keyboard check pressed, and I'm going to go with vk underscore numpad 0. So if you hit the 0 key on the number pad on the keyboard, I'm going to audio group set gain. Let's say the group ID is going to be AG underscore sounds and stuff. The volume is going to be, let's set that to 0. The time, you can fade the volume of an audio group over time, the way that you can with regular sound gain functions. So if this is going to be in milliseconds, so if I want the change in volume to happen over the course of 1 second, I'm going to make that 1000 milliseconds. Let's say if keyboard check numpad 1, we can set our gain to maybe 0.25. This is going to be a number between 0 and 1, by the way, rather than like a number between 0 and 100 or something like that. Numpad 2 is going to set the gain to half, and numpad 3 is going to set the gain to 1. Actually, you know what? Before I do that again, let me actually comment out audio sound play, the background music, because that's kind of distracting. So you can hear the footstep sounds at full volume. If I hit the 0 key, it's going to mute. If I hit the 1 key, very quiet. 2, it's about half as easy it is to perceive, like half volume by ear, because complicated audio perception reasons. And 3 is going to be full volume. And you can hear that it fades over time. So that's audio group set gain. There's also a corresponding audio group get gain. I don't really feel the need to go over every single one of the functions that pertain to audio groups. And lastly, let's talk about the export directory setting in the audio group properties. So this is a very recent addition to GameMaker. I want to say it only came in 2024.13. Which was somewhat overshadowed by all the other problems that 2024.13 had. If you, well, I guess I'll start by explaining exactly how audio groups are stored in your game when you like when you build your game. So let's just go and save the build an executable here, and that's going to open this up. I'm going to extract this. Give me a moment. Actually, that only took like a couple of seconds because this is tiny. But when you look inside your game files when you build your game, you're going to have the executable. Obviously, there's like a default options file, which is for GameMaker settings. There's the data wad, so on Windows data.win, on Linux data.unix, so on and so forth. There's any pieces of audio that are set to be compressed and streamed from the disk. So in my case, that's just going to be the background music. And there's going to be a file called agsoundsandstuff.dat. There's going to be one of these for every audio group that you create in your game. Again, not too dissimilar from like dynamic texture groups if you were to set those up with the texture group manager. So if you have a lot of audio in your game, you could potentially end up with a lot of audio group files just cluttering up your game directory. Even more so with background music, if you have a lot of different pieces of background music in your game. My favorite example to pick on for this is Undertale. So if you look at Undertale, and if you go into Steam and say like manage, browse local files, you can see that most of the files in Undertale's file system is just going to be audio. There's going to be very little by way of everything else. Undertale doesn't actually appear to make use of audio groups. I think this might have come out like before audio groups were added as a feature to GameMaker, but there are a lot of pieces of audio in here, and this is kind of cluttered. It's not so much of a problem if you're distributing your game on Steam or on like some sort of app store consoles, because like the user won't ever have to directly look at the file system if you distribute your game like that. But if you're just packaging your game as a zip and throwing it on like itch or something, you might not want to have all this cluttering up your game's root directory. You might want to make it easier for the user to like find the executable to click on so that they can launch your game. And that is where the export directory comes in. So if I specify an export directory, for example, audio, this is going to be the folder in the game's file system that the audio group is going to be like stored in when you build your game. So if I were to, let's build the executable again, and I'm going to go ahead and extract it. So if we do this, we can see that the audio data group data file has gone into this audio folder. I can likewise do this since you can't set an export directory for the default audio group because that lives in the data wad itself. It's not an external file. So if you wanted to do the same for like background music, which is set to be streamed from the disk, you could set the export directory for the background music in the like the individual sound settings. So I can also put that in audio if I'd like. I can put that in a folder called BGM if you think that would be easier to categorize. I'm gonna go with audio so that it's just in the same folder. And for a third time, let me go and rebuild this executable. And if I were to go and extract that and open it up and look inside, we can see that the background music is now also stored inside the audio folder. This is just a little organizational tool. It's not like it doesn't have an effect on performance or anything. It's just nice to not have a million files cluttering up your game's root file system sometimes. That's about it for audio groups. So again, they're not really overly complicated. There's not a lot you can do with them. They don't really affect performance in your game the way that texture groups do, unless you have so many audio files that your computer is running out of memory, which is a little bit of an extreme case. But they do allow you to do some interesting things. And of course, I think knowing how stuff works is fun, so it can never hurt to explore these things. I'm gonna end this off here. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. If you want the code for this, I'm not gonna bother to upload this sample project right now. I will upload like my original 2D sample project that you can mess around with and play with the audio groups in if you'd like. Honestly, that probably wouldn't be as useful as just going into whatever your game you're currently working on and doing it there. Anyway, I like to post videos on weird stuff you can do in GameMaker, so if you're interested in like 3D stuff or weird shader stuff, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. I hope you all found this useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, Squarecrow, Spy Games, Manta Ray, Ganymede Ghost, GameMaker, Edward Holt, and DJ Gibbles for supporting these videos. If you'd like to join their ranks, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.